What happens in a situation, now the payment is of course delayed because the other side did not pay, and you have to, apart from the delay, the costs associated with these actions, and we are thinking of interest as well as the cost. Can they be recovered or add to the debt?
Yes, so everything is recoverable.
Right.
So we start with just the debt,
right,
and on top of that then we add in interest plus costs. And those interests will keep accruing until the debt is paid, and so will costs.
Until the debt is paid?
Until the debt is paid.
Right.
At what's called the penalty interest rate, which is currently, I think, situated at 9.5%.
Okay, so it's there,
so
it's black and white, there's a penalty interest rate.
It sits there accruing interest until it's paid.
Right.
Yeah.
And costs are added on. So if we have to go down the path of a summons for oral examination, that cost gets added on, and bankruptcy notice, that cost added on.
At the time of the letter of demand, if there is an agreement, can we add the cost of the letter of demand at that stage, or is it only after the court actions that you could add this interest and the lawyer's costs?
Only after.
Right.
You've got to be careful with that. There's been a law firm that's got into some strife.
Right.
I don't actually know the name, but if I didn't, I wouldn't name them. But they did get into some strife and said that you owe the debt and you owe our costs on top, which is misleading conduct. So you can ask for extra payment, and if the person who owes the money will voluntarily say, well, I think it's fair that you've had to incur the cost of getting a lawyer, I'll add a bit on, but you can't enforce it until you actually start a court action.
Regarding those enforcement options, can a client utilise 2 or 3 of them at the same time? Would you recommend it?
Depends on the debt.
Yeah.
Because again, going back to where you are, you're still chasing money, so you're going to be spending all of those options are costing you money to do. So we would go down the most effective path, not as opposed to spending three different things.
So you can do it, but it's unusual. It would be unusual.
Correct.
And just going back just a step really quickly, the summons for oral examination is an information gathering exercise.
Right. That's interesting.
It's not
right.
An enforceable thing where it becomes an order. It's an information gathering exercise, as in we've issued the proceedings or got judgment. We want to know what your financial circumstances are. So it's an information gathering exercise. So they fill out a form, come to the court and answer some questions. Then you have the information, which then guides you as to perhaps what the next best enforcement option might be.
In relation to sheriffs, when do they get involved? And actually, I'll ask the next question later.
Well, generally, you would have to get an order first, so there'll be a judgment.
That's from the magistrate's court?
From the magistrate's court, there'll be an order made that this person pays that much plus interest plus costs, usually those costs being court costs. One of the enforcement options you've got is to issue what's called a warrant of seizure and sale, where the sheriff's office can be instructed to go out to the property, they'll knock on the door and try to seize some assets of the person who owes the money and sell them at auction to pay back to the debtor. To pay the debt. There's some tips and traps about it. It's not not a perfect mechanism.
That's right. Yes, but sometimes that has to be employed, so to speak. And what if the sheriff goes and the person refuses the sheriff entry into the house?
That's one of the reasons why it's an imperfect option, because they don't have powers of forced entry.
Right.
The person answers the door. It's the sheriff's office. They can say, I'm not interested in talking to you, and close the door and walk away.
There is some caveats with that. So, for example, if the property is owned by them, they can force a sale of that property. Even
like, for example, a car or something?
Well, they can collect a car. They have a power to seize. So, for example, if the person owns a vehicle and the vehicle is unencumbered, they can seize the vehicle. Even though you haven't said, yes, that's my vehicle, but if that's registered and you've turned up to the house, and they can seize that, and that will then jump them to come out most of the time. So that's one option. If there is a property, they can force a sale of the property as well. The
property
house.
means either the house, the land, or whatever the property, the computers, if it is somewhere, or in the porch or somewhere.
So there's there's a bit of a different procedure depending on whether they're seizing personal property, like stereos and antiques and so forth, or real estate.
Correct.
Right.
There's a different procedure.
Generally same principle, but different procedure.
Can you give me an idea, if the debt is not that much, and if the property is of course valued, and the process of doing that going through that process is costly as well, somewhat. But the question that I'm asking is it still a viable, practicable option to go through that pathway?
Well, you can do it. Again, let's just say that there is $5,000. You can do it yourself through VCAD. You can get a VCAD order. You then have to apply in the magic code to get the order authenticated. Once you do that, you can then take it to the sheriff.
Right.
So a person on a small debt can do all those steps yourself.
Right.
Becomes a bit more difficult if the debt is disputed and if it's a larger debt. If it's a small debt, yeah. So again, it's not cost efficient if you're doing it through lawyers on a small debt, but it is cost efficient if it's a larger debt and you succeed.
Sometimes it's a matter of the person doing a cost-benefit analysis and saying, well, how much time and effort is this going to cost me to get this debt, or how much am I going to spend? Of course, some of the spend goes on top of the debt versus how likely I am to get it and what do I have to go through.
So in your experience, how much of these warrants actually result in the satisfaction of the debt?
Again, there's a bit of a distinction between real estate and personal property. In my experience, although you may well think the opposite, there's more chances and there's been more recovery of land and real estate rather than personal property.
Now, Paul and Senad, if I were to ask you to give something, a summary, some information to our viewers, what would you say?
Well, I would say, again, the starting point is the quantum of a debt. Small, and I've talked enough, if it's a small debt, there's options available for them to do it themselves. If it's a larger debt and if it's a debt against an individual or a company, so the individual, I would push down the bankruptcy path. Most people don't want to go bankrupt. It prohibits them from travelling, it prohibits them from getting home loans. I mean, the property market is great at the moment, so it prohibits them from getting any home loans or credit cards or anything.
Or maybe I can't be a director of a company.
Can't be a director of a company,
yep.
And if they're professional, they can use their professional licence. So there's all sorts
especially if you're a lawyer.
Especially if you're chasing a lawyer or an accountant, that's right, or an architect or anything.
Right.
Even builders. I mean, most of the big debts are with builders. Builders lose their builder's license, so the insurance company won't cover them. So,
right.
But you got to pay to get to that point. But you do. Well, essentially, once you get to that point, there is the prospect of success or recovering back is quite high.
Right.
If it's a company, I mean, then the process is exactly the same. You issue a stat demand. And if the company, the liquidator or the administrator, which you do a fair bit of work for, would then look at all of the company's books and records.
Right.
And if there had been any preference payments or any cause of action that they can take personally against the director, they can do so. So there are a lot of options available for them. It's just that unfortunately you have to spend a bit of money to get there, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. Paul, for your last words.
Well, my last words, if
TV show.
if somebody owes you some money, you do have a suite of options. It is best, and it's not. I'm not saying this as a self-serving statement, but it is best to get legal advice, particularly if the debt's fairly large, say over 5 to 10,000 and that type of figure. Get some advice. You do have a large range of options. It is a slightly imperfect legal system, but the chances of recovery generally are fairly good.
Well, I would like to thank you two for coming here and spending your valuable time and giving us the information that you have given. So thank you.
No worries.
And that's all the time that we've got for you today. If you want to check our past episodes, you can go to our website, which is www.lawhelpaustralia.org, or you can go to our Facebook or YouTube page and just do a search for Law Help Australia. Until next time, be safe and bye for now.